has been hired to help with City of Jenks workload. Mrs. Hilton, I believe you can make that announcement for us.
Yes. This is Mr. Carl Fritchen. He comes to us from the private sector, although he's had many, many years in the public sector. Carl, if you would like to say anything, feel free, and welcome to the City of Jenks.
Thank you, Marseille. Yeah, I appreciate being here and looking forward to working with the city. As Marseille mentioned, I did spend a number of years in the private sector. Also worked 13 years with the city of Owasso, so I was with them when they went through their growth spurt. So I'm happy to be here and help with the growth here in Jenks.
Awesome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here, Carl. It's nice to meet you.
One more announcement before we get going. If you plan, or if you want to make a public comment on any of the items that we have on the agenda tonight, please sign in the back if you have not already done so. Thank you.
All right. We will go ahead and call the meeting to order of the Jenks Planning Commission. Today's Thursday, May the 7th, 2026. Time is 6:03, and we will begin with a roll call, please, Brenda.
Wilson?
Here.
Boris?
Here.
Bowman?
Here.
Sellers? Here. Nixon?
Here.
Williams?
Here.
Chair West?
Here. At this time, we'll also have our invocation followed by our Pledge of Allegiance. Josh, if you want to come forward. This is Josh. It's Mosteller, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Josh is with Battle Creek Church here in Jenks, about 118th and Elwood. They're
Yes,
on
sir.
the west side of the street. If you'd like to tell us something about your church, we'd love to hear it, and then proceed with your invocation.
Absolutely, man. Battle Creek loves being a part of this city. We love being a part of the Jenks community and just blessed with the opportunity to be a part of what God's doing here in this awesome city. And we'd love to have you celebrate your mom this Sunday at one of our services if you're looking for a place to worship and celebrate the ladies in your life. So
Thanks, Josh.
let's pray.
Let's go ahead and stand for the prayer, and we'll remain standing for our pledge.
God, I thank you so much for the leadership of our city. I thank you for the people who make up our city. That makes it special. God, I thank you for all of the churches that work together to make your name known in this amazing city. And God, I pray that tonight would honor you. God, I pray for our leadership in this planning commission. I pray for the city council, for our mayor, God, that you give wisdom and discernment as they make decisions. God, we know that many are the plans of man, but that your will prevail. And so, God, I pray that this city would honor you in all they do, God. I pray that you would work in our hearts to make us more like you. God, that we would serve our neighbor and love other people in the way that you love us. God, help us to honor you with our lives. And God, I pray that you would do your will in this city and bring many to you through the gospel. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Josh. Let's pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, may be seated. When on rare occasions when we get a good crowd in here like this, I like to read this. Kind of explains who the Planning Commission is, what we do, who we are, and how things will happen tonight. If you'll bear with me just a minute or so. Welcome to tonight's public meeting of the Jenks Planning Commission. Before we move to business items, I'd like to briefly explain, like I said, who we are, what we do, and what to expect tonight. The City of Jenks Planning Commission is comprised of 7 citizens of Jenks who are appointed by the City Council to serve terms of 3 years. Every seat on the commission is filled by an unelected citizen volunteer. We receive no compensation for this time. The Planning Commission plays a key role in the development process by making recommendations to the City Council on community development issues, zoning ordinances, zoning map amendments, preliminary and final subdivision plats, specific use permits, and land use plans. We hold public meetings just like this one to gain information and advice from professionals, from citizen groups, from property owners and developers. Planning Commission and the City Council are separate bodies. The Planning Commission is a recommending body and functions like a technical consultant to the City Council. The Council is the legislative body and makes the final decision as it deems appropriate. Tonight we have an agenda before us that we must adhere to by statute. We are not permitted to have discussion or answer questions that are not listed or a part of the agenda. There may be some public concerns or questions that because of governing open meetings and because of laws governing open meetings and public hearings we cannot address tonight. We are sensitive to your concerns, and we'll make every effort to note these concerns and questions and help obtain answers through the appropriate channels. As we proceed with the business items on the agenda, we will first hear the staff report delivered by the city planner, followed by a period of time reserved for questions by the commissioners. The applicant or applicant's representative will have the opportunity to make a presentation. Following the applicant's presentation, I will open the floor for public comment, and members of the audience may address the commission with questions, concerns, in support or against the application. After the public hearing, the floor will be closed. The applicant may be given additional time to address those specific concerns raised during the public hearing. The Planning Commission will then vote on a recommendation that will be forwarded to City Council. Our first item of business is action on our consent agenda. Tonight we have 4 items listed there. They can all be heard at one time, voted on, or we can pull any of those off for further discussion. Is there an action to be taken on agenda item number 1?
I move to accept the consent agenda.
I would second.
Brandon, let's vote, please.
Wilson,
Yes.
Bors,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Sellers,
Yes.
Nixon,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Chair West.
Yes. Agenda item number 2 will be pulled. Agenda item 3 is JZ 26 PUD 156, a request for rezoning from AG agricultural to CS commercial shopping and RM2 residential multifamily with PUD 156 overlay, and to amend the comprehensive plan future land use map from business park to high-intensity single-family and regional commercial. General location of this is the north of 121st Street and east of 33rd West Avenue. And Mrs. Hilton, I believe you have a staff report for us.
Yes, thank you, Chair West, and thank you, Planning Commissioners. This item is identified as JZ 26-PUD 156, and there are 2 requests. I will make one staff report, and the motion will be for both requests, so there will not be 2 motions. If you are so inclined to hear the staff report and the public comment and the applicant, and at the end, if you're making a recommendation of approval for this land use change, then the recommendation and approval would include both requests. So again, there's 2 items we're going to talk about, but there's going to be 1 motion. So I will go through the staff report pretty well how it's written, and I'll try not to confuse you all and me because it's quite lengthy, and sometimes, when there's a lot to be said, sometimes I get into the weeds or off track, and I don't want to. I'll try to keep it simple. So, with that being said, this project is adjacent to 121st Street. That's an east-west street within the city of Jenks. It is managed and maintained by ODOT. So it is a state highway, and it is intended to carry a lot of traffic. And if you live out there, and I think most of you in the room do, you live somewhere near there, then you know there is a lot of traffic in that area. And it was designed to carry a lot of traffic, and it does. So 33rd Street is the north-south street that is closest, and it is a county road, and it does not have the same type of capacity that the east-west street has. So with that being said, there are about 105 acres in question. So we have, this is where I start jumping around, telling the story. Okay, I'm just going to keep going. We have 105 acres. The north 40 acres is, we're looking at a mix of housing types. And then the southern portion is primarily commercial. So I'm going to go with that. So tract 1, as we move forward, tract 1, we're asking for commercial shopping, and tract 2 would be residential multifamily 2. So the northern portion is tract 2, the southern portion is tract 1. So again, the 65 acres adjacent to 121st Street, we're asking for commercial shopping. That is what the applicant has asked for. And tract 2 is above that, that's about 40 acres, and they're asking for residential multifamily. Within the development areas, about 56 acres would be developed as commercial, about 25 acres as multifamily, and 25 acres as residential, et cetera. I should say 25%, an additional 25%. Okay. During the, after the public notice went out, it gives our contact information. So if you want to provide questions or comments, you can contact the city. And during that time, I think I had 15 or 16 people from the public send emails, and I included the majority of them. I think one or two may have come in that I accidentally left out, and I apologize for that. There was one gentleman since the publication of the agenda from Country View, I think, that sent me an email. So I have heard a considerable amount from the public. Later on in the agenda, you'll see where I included the emails and then did a synopsis of the concerns. So one of the questions that came up repeatedly in the emails, and that is one of the requests tonight, is an amendment of the land use plan. So in 2020, the city of Jenks, that's when I came, 3 days after the world shut down with COVID. I was here 3 days prior. So on day 3, I was sent home to do my job. I was like, I don't even have a laptop. I don't even know anyone's names. So I went home, but the city had already hired Halcyon Levine to update their comprehensive plan. So that's their land use map and their land use policies. And they also hired Halcyon Levine to update their zoning code. So they moved from just a zoning code to a unified development ordinance, which included the code and subdivision regulations. So at that time, we got through everything and we did adopt the land use plan in 2020. So the first thing that you'll see in the staff report are the policies and the map for the comprehensive plan. So right now, along the southern edge, let me ask Mr. Macy, can you look at page 4 of 9 of the staff report? Thank you. Could you try to just zoom in a little bit, please? Okay. So if you had a copy of the agenda, you would see this in the agenda packet. So the brown areas represent the development of high intensity or multifamily. Actually, the brown is multifamily. So the gold, I'm sorry, I'm so needy. Can you just pull it down just a little bit? Where I wrote the words high intensity single family, that's gold. And there are some areas further north that are gold, and there are some areas further north that are brown. The blue is what we said, this probably needs a buffer because along 121st and along Highway 75, the city said we need to capture as much regional commercial as possible. So regional commercial represents large box, your Home Depots, your Lowe's, your whatever you would consider a large box development. Personally, I like a TJ Maxx and a Home Goods, but just saying. So the red areas represent regional commercial, and as a planner and in planning processes, generally you look for some type of buffer between a heavy commercial area and a residential area. So for this project, we said, or this project area, we said, let's look at some business park. So that would be something that you would see in East Tulsa where you have the Quick Trip headquarters. So they have 20, 30 acres and they have a large business park where people come in. You have Blue Cross Blue Shield. I think there's a State Farm campus out there. So we thought that might be a good fit. This applicant is asking for a different type of buffer. This applicant is asking for a high-intensity single family for some townhomes in that area that could also potentially function as a live-work. So In a lot of areas, the land use plan or the planners will put in some type of medium density or high density residential to be the buffer instead of an office area. So in this case, the first request that we'll talk about tonight is that buffer area. So a little bit of what's blue would turn to regional commercial. And then the words that are in yellow, and there's kind of a box outlined, and that would be high-intensity single-family. And later, we'll look at an exhibit that shows a very basic site plan. So if you go back to page 2 of the staff report, it talks about what is regional commercial. And basically, regional commercial says there should be near Highway 75 and high traffic volumes and easy access. So our comprehensive plan always said that areas near Highway 75 should be regional commercial. The high-intensity single-family says that it should be near high-intensity multifamily and non-residential areas. So that request for the high-intensity single-family fits very nicely within the request to amend from business park to high-intensity single-family. That was exactly what the document recommended, and that is the request that is being asked tonight. And then the brown area, where it says multifamily, says should be part of master planned communities. Let's see. This land use type can act to separate and transition single-family areas from higher intensity non-residential development and busy streets. So everything that the applicant has asked for is in full and complete alignment with the land use plan. Okay. If you look at page 5 of 9 in the staff report, thank you, I want you to put an X through that exhibit there, because the applicant created an Exhibit E in their document, and at one point, these two were exactly the same, and then they changed a couple of things, and I did not update my staff report. As this goes forward to City Council, I will just pull it out altogether and refer to Exhibit E. So in a minute, we'll look at Exhibit E instead. Can you zoom in a little bit to the map at the bottom? So here you see this is a zoning map. This comes from NCOG, and that's Indian Nation Council of Governments, and they maintain the zoning map for the whole Northeast area. So what you see is the current zoning, and that blue area outlines the project development area. So for, I guess, decades, this has been oil wells, pipelines, oil fields, that type of thing. And the area to the east is a very large development called Sooner Development. And then they changed the name to Coal Creek, and who knows what it'll be before it's ever said and done. But that was approved probably about 4 years ago, and that would be commercial and some residential. And then along 121st, so that's the primary east-west street. South of that, for context, is the Walmart Supercenter area located in Glenpole and their convention area. Then you also have some industrial parcels south. You can see they have some RE zoned lots kind of nestled in between all of that. If you go to the north of the development area, we have a residential subdivision that is in the county, and then you have, looks like a large, probably 10 acre, maybe less, single-family residence that is still zoned ag, and that's pretty much the development area. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. The next section of the staff report is literally taken straight from the code. So if anybody had time to go through that, it says, planned unit developments, and these are master planned communities. So they're saying, this applicant has said, hey, my client owns 105 acres, and we've looked at your land use plan, and we think that we match the land use plan with the one exception, we don't want to do business parks. So for that buffer area, we'd like to use townhome project or product. And we're going to put it in a PUD, which is a planned unit development. So the map that we just looked at is the zoning map. So we're asking, and when I say we, I'm saying the applicant. The applicant is asking for commercial shopping on the bottom and RM2 on the top 40. And then over all of that, the entire project area has another layer of zoning, and that zoning is called a planned unit development. And so they went through and said, not only are we going to have CS, but there are some things that we're not going to allow moving forward, that if we just did straight zoning would be allowed. Or there's some things that would require a specific use permit. And in that case, we're going to go ahead and allow it with conditions. So we'll go through all of that, but these are the standards in our code that had to be considered for this PUD. So the next few pages are the actual planned unit development document. I'm not going to go through all of it. A lot of it you will see duplicated in the actual language of the staff report. They put in, for track 2, for the development standards, the RM2, they added some very specific language on how the lots would be laid out and the types of materials and the parking and different things like that. We're going to keep going. So in the exhibit, one of the concerns, I would say primarily the questions that I received came from the neighborhood that's in the county directly to the west. So if that's a half-mile radius there, that corner that's kind of, you can't see, that neighborhood is located in that general area. And most of the comments and emails that I received came from that neighborhood. When that neighborhood was developed, there was a stub-out street to the east, and they were required to put that in for public safety purposes. So it was always intended that that neighborhood would connect to the east, to the next development. This developer put into the PUD that they will connect to that neighborhood, but they will also be providing a gate, so there would not be any through access for people to come in and out. So if there were concerns about commercial traffic cutting through the neighborhood, they would not be able to do that because there would be an access gate there. Non-access gate, kind of. So. Okay, let's look. We can stay there. That's a good place to stay. So again, that top portion that's green and kind of purpley blue, that would be track 2. So that's the area that's being rezoned to RM2. The bottom section is commercial shopping. That kind of gives you the general layout of the site. So there's some single-family residential, there's some smaller single-family residential. The longer rectangular pieces are multifamily, and then that little blue area that we talked about had previously been thought could be a business park. Those are a townhome type product. The area for the multifamily, can you just zoom in a little bit, Brandon? That area, if you can see the V shape going through there, this will always have encumbrances. So this is always going to have issues, this land. Even once the Corporation Commission goes in and everything is done correctly and appropriately through the Corporation Commission, there's still going to be pipelines in that area, and they're going to be required to work around that. So the layout could not fit the elements of the code. So they took the elements that were close and then kind of adjusted them, and that's some of the language and text that you see in the PUD. But that's also why the actual site plan, and this is conceptual, It doesn't mean that those buildings will be in that place. It just means, in general, in that area, there will be multifamily. But because of those pipelines and you don't know the engineering at this point, you don't know any of that. This is just pie in the sky. At some point, we will have, if this gets approved, there'll be multifamily in that area. And we can so they've scaled it. They know what the units could be, how much parking there could be. So there's some skill and some thought to it. But at the end of the day, you have to get into the dirt, right? And figure out what can really be done. And they don't know that yet. Okay, page 58. Brandon, if you can go to page 58. It's actually the one before. Okay, so the applicant was very helpful in producing this Exhibit E. So this chart that you see is straight from the Unified Development Ordinance. And they're saying, so what I did is, if there was a single-family detached option, these would be the requirements. And they're saying, we love that, but we're going to ask for these exceptions. If there was a duplex product built, this is what the code says, and they said this is what we're going to ask for. If there's a townhome, this is what the code says, this is what they're asking for. And if there's multifamily, this is what the code says, and this is what we're asking for. So that's what that first 16-3-1A represents. And then the next table, if you'll go to the next table, this is also straight from the code. So if you, we have this chart in our Unified Development Ordinance, and it tells you what is and is not allowed in that zoning. So to be rezoned to an RM2, and there's a P beside it, that P says it is permitted by right. So if I purchased a property that had RM2 zoning, I could go in by right and build an apartment complex as long as I met everything in the code. And so in this case, they have to meet the requirements of the code unless there is an exception in the PUD document. So you can see here, there were a couple of things that were not allowed, and then there are things that they asked for specifically. So everything in that far right column represents PUD 156. The next page is commercial shopping, same exact thing. We looked at if you purchased a piece of property that was zoned commercial shopping and you called the city and you said, hey, I would like to put a restaurant there, and I would say, great, it's allowed by right. And I would say it needs to be set back X feet, or it can only be 35 feet high. And you would say, great, I meet all that criteria. You turn in your building permit, do your engineering, and you're down the road. In this case, you would meet all of that, plus the planned unit development, and you would be able to ask for any exceptions or add to. So that's what this represents. So commercial shopping, what they ask for is, we would say for a multifamily building or complex, you would have to come to us and have the same conversation that you're having tonight. So instead of in the future having a specific use permit, we're having that future conversation tonight. So this PUD would say anything, an apartment building that was allowed through a specific use permit process in the future, we're asking to have that conversation and allow it now. So that's why it's in blue, because that's what the PUD asked for. And then there's a couple of things that that they struck. Let me see. The primary one being medical marijuana dispensaries. So they struck that and said that that wouldn't be allowed in commercial shopping, which would be allowed by right otherwise. So I think that is everything I had on there. Okay, page 63 is the summary of the public comments. We talked a little bit about the traffic and road safety, which was one of the #1 concerns, that 33rd Street is a county Road, that 121st is a state highway. It is maintained and operated by ODOT. I will also say, you saw on the big map earlier, the Sooner development or Coal Creek development. We've been in conversations probably since we started talking to Sooner Development about that on the light signalization of 121st Street, about access along 121st Street, and how to improve all the circulation in that general area. So we've had about 4 years, maybe 3 years, 3.5, I don't know, a long time, a lot of conversations already about traffic in that area. So again, we already knew that this area was going to develop for commercial. We've already been in those conversations for a long time. There is no final resolution as of this moment tonight, but there's a lot of hope. Okay, water supply, drainage, and flooding. These are very common questions and concerns. The city of Jenks is working with Sooner Development to get utilities into their development. And again, this was always anticipated that whatever happened to the land on the west side of Sooner Development would also tap into city utilities. So at this point, it would be the city of Jenks providing the utilities. Again, those studies have not been done, and anything could change. We don't do engineering at this point. What we're asking tonight is whether or not these uses are acceptable in that area. So this is a land use conversation. We don't have engineering analysis done, but there are plans, and have been for many years, for that area. School capacity. The schools use the same land use plan that we've talked about a couple of times tonight. So for instance, the city of Bixby has a good portion of their, probably not a lot, but they have several square miles of their school system within the city of Jenks. And I think it was about, within the last 6 months, they've contacted the city, said, hey, we're updating we're working on our next plan. So they need to do their demographic studies. They use our land use plan, as do the other school systems, when they start planning where their schools should be, what their capacity will be, and how quickly it will fill out. So the school is part of our technical advisory committee. So when a plat comes through, or when a development comes through, they are alerted that this is coming into the area, and they are able to plan accordingly. So they do have knowledge of what's going on. We have a very small portion in our city code about oil wells, et cetera. So all of that has to be, you have to look at that. They have to go through it. We do not regulate what the Corporation Commission regulates. So anything that the Corporation Commission does is not, we don't oversee them. We don't make sure that their stuff is done. That's between the developer and the Corporation Commission. There were concerns about property value, privacy, and noise. We have already in place buffers and different things like that. When it comes to crime and neighborhood safety, if you call our police department, they are amazing. They go above and beyond to take care of the residents of the city of Jenks. They've been planning according to growth. They're very familiar with our land use plan. They know the direction that the city is going on the different areas. The comprehensive plan and planning commission duties, I think Chair West did a really great job of explaining what the responsibilities and duties are for a planning commission. And most of them have been doing it a while. We have one little green greenhorn over here. But for the most part, we have a really very capable planning commission. It is an honor to work with them. As far as, environmental, topographical, and historical factors, those come into play in every case, and they are resolved according to the engineering, and they design according to the elements that they encounter during their discovery phase. So I will probably, let's go to page 4 of that public comment summary. This is just a recap of what you've already seen. It's that zoning map from NCOG that shows the project area. Shows that neighborhood to the west that we have talked about. Shows all the commercial development and zoning that has already taken place to the east and to the south. The next page is shows our county parcels and our fence lines. So there are quite a few neighborhoods, not a lot, but there's probably 10 different neighborhoods or neighborhood areas. You can go to the next page. That are that are in our fence line, but have not been annexed into the city of Jenks. So that top map shows you the areas that have never been annexed. Some of them have subdivisions in them, some of them do not. The bottom one, you can better see the outline of the city of Jenks. You have Glenpool in purple, Jenks in green, and then Bixby in orange, and then you have Tulsa in the dark green color. This is a school district map. So you can see where Jenks Public Schools is. They go on both sides of the river. They have a little bit in Creek County. They are primarily in Tulsa County. The project area is that little blue bubble. The map at the very bottom shows this is the comprehensive plan. That little dotted line showed that there was always going to be a future connection north-south to 111th and 121st, connecting both of those, and then some other accesses going east and west. Didn't mean we knew where, it just meant that it was planned for. The next page is that comprehensive land use plan that we talked about. And then the next couple of pages are the actual emails that we received. So I think that goes through about page 95. I don't really have anything else to add. You saw the conceptual site plan that was presented with the project. You saw the layout, the basic general layout that was presented in the site plan. You can go back to that, Brandon. Let's go to the page that shows the general layout. Yep, that's perfect. Thank you. With that being said, after looking at the land use map, and with the exception of the amendment from business park to high-intensity single-family as a buffer, and looking at the long-term projections for the traffic connectivity and the internal connectivity, then looking at the surrounding areas that have been developed and will be developed, staff does recommend approval of the project as presented with, I had a few comments and exceptions.
Thank you, Mrs. Hilton. We'll go ahead and open it up to commissioner comments, questions. We can start over here on my right. If anybody has any questions for Marseille.
Bored you to death. Sorry.
Greg?
No, not at this time till we hear some more information.
Gotcha. On the left.
Can you explain for us and both the public, besides the land use conversation tonight, after that, there's still a very extensive process for drainage, all of these other items. That still has to go through a whole planning phase and approved. Tonight is just the land use
Yes.
request.
So there are two requests tonight. One is the land use map amendment, and that's where we're talking about saying that, yes, there needs to be a buffer. Does it have to be business park? No, it could be high-intensity, single-family residential. So that's one question. And then the other question that's before you is, is it appropriate to rezone to commercial shopping on the south and to multifamily on the north? And with that rezoning, we're requiring a planned unit development. So what happens in the development process for any project, once you get your entitlements is often the term that's used. Once you get your entitlements, that's where the city says yes or no. So we'll say on a project that the city says yes. So they have their entitlements in place. Now they can actually go back and begin planning a project. And that requires hiring an engineer, an engineering firm, committing to, you look at what was approved, and now you decide how many units can you really do? Well, not as many as we showed because of whatever reason. Maybe there's a drainage issue and your pond has to be 30% larger, so you're going to lose some units. Or maybe the city, like one of the things on the north, we want an access to the east. So now they're going to have to move some things around because in their initial design, they didn't have an access to the east. So they're going to have to add that. So that is their due diligence period, and they can call it different things, but they're usually a lot of times before someone else buys it, or if they buy it or they have a period of time, just like with a house or something else, you have a period of time when you're looking to buy something and you want to do some particular inspections or things like that. So you'll do another level of inquiry, right? But you may not do a deep dive. So let's say they got all their checks, all their boxes checked for that next level of inquiry. So now they are going, let's say that the whole project will pretend that this is exactly what's going to be built. Their engineering firm will have to look at the hydrology. They're going to have to work with the Corporation Commission. They're going to have to look at our subdivision regulations. They're going to have to work with ODOT and with all these other things to do a traffic impact study. And whatever those things come back with, then they have to go through that remediation process. So they're going to have to adjust according to sewer capacity, water capacity, ODOT, stormwater runoff. And then once you start getting some of those things answered, you can submit a preliminary plat. And and they may plat all of it at one time, or they may plat part of it at one time. Usually for preliminary, if it stays under one ownership, they'll plat all of it at once. And they hire an engineer. And now they're just dividing it. So we're just getting a legal description. It's going to have 3 blocks, and it's going to have 14 lots, and it's going to have 5 reserves, and it's going to be 105 acres. Very technical document, very high level. They have an engineer who said, we've looked at, it's been surveyed, they put the pins in, so they do the preliminary plat, but they still probably have done their hydrology at that point, because usually they know that they're getting ready to build, so they'll be doing their hydrology reports. That does not come through planning, and it doesn't come through planning commission. Hydrology reports go to engineering, because I'm not an engineer. I don't wear an engineering hat, believe it or not. Some planners like to, but I don't. So those hydrology reports and stormwater reports, those are dealt with usually between the engineer of record, which is whoever the applicant or client hires, and then those come into the city for review. And they cannot cause any adverse impact. So when they're looking at it, I had an engineer that I worked with years ago who said, they look at where a drop of water goes today, and they study that, and then there can't be more drops of water going there. So there's today's, what happens today, and then it can't be greater than when the project is developed, it cannot have a greater impact than what it has today. I think I said that correctly. So they have to look at all of that, and engineers, they have their own level of design and things that they have to go through. And Carl and I have talked a lot, like when you're on the private side, we have 5 boxes, we'll just say, there might be 25 boxes going on behind the scenes of things that they have to go through, that things that with the Corporation Commission or with other people, all the things that they have to do, it doesn't come back to the city. We don't regulate their regulations. They have to get all of that taken care of. So I will also say, just because a project gets approved for development doesn't mean the project gets developed. So I've seen, not a ton, but many projects that got approved for their land use amendment and even their zoning and planned unit development, but they could never get the sewer to work. No matter what, they just couldn't make it work. Or they could never get the water pressure. So you have to have a certain water pressure for a commercial development. Well, if you can't get that water pressure, you don't get to build the project. That's just how it works. So sometimes people buy land that they literally cannot develop. And I've seen that in a couple of different places. It's just not possible. Or, this is a funny story. I think it's funny. When I was first starting out in planning, they would be like, well, you can develop anything if you have enough money. I thought it just meant that they were always paying people off. What they mean is, like, there's a solution out there if you're willing to pay people to, like, you're going to have to hire someone that doesn't normally do these things. You're going to have to hire the person who's the expert in sewer lines to get it to whatever, or the expert in water pressure. Like, there's probably a solution, but it's going to cost you a lot more money. So anyway, that was my funny story. So the only thing that comes back to the city for the Planning Commission to review is the technical document, which is the plat. And that plat should mirror whatever you see tonight. It should be very, very similar.
I guess that was a really good question, Amy. Good job. Anything else? I had one question. You said in your report that everything the applicant has asked for is accounted for in the land use plan. The land use plan is the comprehensive plan, correct? Then why are they asking for an amendment to the comp plan? Can you explain that, please?
I'm usually the one who asks for the amendments. I like our comp plan to be matchy-matchy with the zoning. I like our zoning and comp plan to look the same. So if you're talking about buffers and buffering, a business park is a great buffer, but high-intensity single-family is also a great buffer. And in this case, they came with a different product, and that's the flexibility that you can have within your comp plan. So I probably could have left it. I preferred not to leave it. I preferred to better match the zoning and the intent. I think when you're looking at a land use map, I want it to tell the best and closest story possible so that everybody knows what the expectation is. I don't want people thinking that Quick Trip is moving their headquarters to Jenks when in fact there's a lot of really nice people and some brownstones that are coming to Jenks. So.
All right, and that amendment is to facilitate townhomes as the buffer for between that and the residential to the north. Okay, and then if I'm reading this correctly, on the map that's currently up, then on the eastern side of the existing neighborhood, those longer buildings are apartments?
Yes, sir. That is correct.
Why aren't those townhomes? If we're buffering between the existing residential and the new higher intensity?
Because that's just residential against residential. The strip going east-west is residential between commercial. So you're buffering the commercial, not residential.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just ask for clarity? To the left, on the map anyway, to the left, which I guess would be the west in real life, of where those apartments are, is that, or isn't that a neighborhood in that big square? Right.
It's Timber Creek.
So where is the buffer on the left?
That's what he just asked.
Okay,
So,
and I think that we were on the same track of like, there is no buffer on that section.
you don't normally buffer residential from residential.
And so
There are
I
setbacks
thought
and
that's
other
what you were
buffering
saying
required.
about the townhomes was
The townhome
buffer.
is buffering the commercial from the residential.
Okay, well, I appreciate the clarification.
All right, any other questions of staff? Nope. If the applicant is present, go ahead, come up, sir, give your name and address for us, and make your presentation.
Good afternoon, Chair and Commission. Mark Grubbs, 1800 South Sarah Road, Yukon, Oklahoma. I don't have anything to add. Marseille covered it and covered it well. I say I don't have anything to add. The only other thing that I would say is this parcel is also in an approved TIF district for this area. Sooner Investments and this property were both included in that TIF district that was approved by the city of Jenks. So I think that's good information to know because it is in a TIF district for that area. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Otherwise, I'll save y'all's time and let you hear from the community.
Any questions for Mark while he's up here? Nope. All righty, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You have quite a list there, Brandon. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call a 5-minute recess before we have public comment on that, so we can kind of keep the continuity of those comments as when we start them. So we'll call a recess at 6:53, and we'll try to resume at 6:58. Go ahead and continue our meeting this evening. This will be the public comment portion of our meeting. We would ask that you remember that this is a conversation about land use. We won't be talking about the engineering of any project that comes in here. We will ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. Brandon does have a timer for us on that will be visible to you, and we appreciate that. We do want to hear anyone and everyone that has someone to say to help us make this decision. So try not to repeat what you hear over and over. If something is said specifically, you certainly can reiterate it a time or two, but try not to just repeat that same thing over and over and over. Brandon's going to read names that have signed up to speak, and we will go in that order.
Kendall Stevens?
Kendall just wanted to let us know she was present.
Chantel? Same? Okay. Rick Wilson?
Well, as a homeowner and a landowner to the north of this,
I got
sorry.
the address.
You have the addresses.
You have my
Never-
address?
Sorry.
You want me to repeat?
He's got it. Great, thank you.
And as a developer myself, the gentleman mentioned that it's a TIF project. My question would be is that those TIF dollars are then generated and held away from the city and the county and even not going to the school. So therefore, and typically a TIF district will expand 15 to 25 years. My question is, where's that money going if it's not going back to Jenks schools? Because we've already said that the schools are pretty well full. And then also, a lot of those TIF dollars are being regenerated back to the developer. And in this case, I'm curious how much the developer is getting from those TIF dollars and how much of that money is now going to be pushed away from the city of Jenks for 15 to 25 years. And that's an average time on a TIF district that the school's not going to see, the county's not going to see, and the city's not going to see.
Thank you, Rick. Yeah, if you want to comment on that, Marseille, if you're comfortable doing that. I know that's not really a land use issue. Go ahead.
I will comment on it just for correction and clarification. The TIF district, when it was established, and the TIF committee consists of the county entities, the library, the VOTEC, there's a whole number of them, and the schools. And the schools do get their money. They were not excluded from the TIF dollars. So that is the correction.
All right, Brandon, who you got next?
Aaron Boost? Bush. Sorry, I thought those were two T's.
Hi, guys. I am not good at this type of thing. I just am a property owner and landowner right there. And our concern, just with all the different properties we've purchased in other states in Oklahoma, are how small the lots are that are going in for the small homes, especially near a commercial area, because we've lived in places where the commercial property with very small homes like that, crime goes up. And it's unfortunate, but it's true and has affected our lives in the decades that we've owned homes. So I guess my question is the city contracting with the developer to build Section 8 homes or work with Section 8 homes in this tract here? So that is one of my questions. And my second question is, what is going to be done about 111th and all of that traffic and stuff that is coming from the other homes that are being built? And have they done any kind of like traffic, I don't know, whatever you do, planning for 111th? Because, man, it is getting harder and harder all the time to get out of our little residential neighborhood. There have been accidents multiple times at 111th when turning left or right there. People don't seem to know how to yield. And it is getting scary, especially for those of us who have teenagers who are driving. But anyway, those are my two questions.
All right, Thank you, Aaron. We'll let the developer address that after the public comments open, or is closed, sorry.
Jennifer Sixkiller? 11816 South 31st? Oh, sorry.
Well, I'm a resident in Timber Creek, and I hadn't planned to say anything because of the requirements that you placed on us. But the only thing I think I would ask is why develop this particular tract when there are more suitable tracts available right off of 75 and 121st Street that are already zoned for commercial? Why pursue this now with this particular tract? And I think that's my question.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Don and Anthony, I'm assuming I can skip you? Okay. Ryan Bidzarian? Bidrussian?
So I'm also a resident just to the west there, and my concern is that right there on that corner, right there, my house sits right where those apartments look like they're gonna be being built. Now, there's a number of us that have houses that are on that line and to the south of that line. We put a lot of money into pools, backyards, and everything on there. And for me to think that I can have a 3-story apartment looking down on my pool does not sit with me at all. So that's my concern I'm probably speaking for everybody that's in that neighborhood. Not only that, but also the safety concern that's gonna happen there. We all know that it's gonna be a safety concern. 33rd West is a mess as it is. There's people going in and out of there, especially with the traffic on 75 now, and you can see it's just gonna double, maybe triple. So my concern is the development of apartments that are gonna be looking down on my backyard that I spent over $100,000 in my backyard on my pool.
Thank you, sir.
Ryan.
Thanks.
Would Nikki like to say anything? Yeah, okay. Michael Such?
Michael Such, Timber Creek resident. Do any of y'all, I don't think any of y'all know, y'all don't live in Timber Creek at all, do you? Okay. So you don't have to look at this when this goes in. Okay. You've covered some of the things, so I do appreciate it. I'm going to do the due diligence for our HOA and reiterate 4 of the top things that we think is most important, just to make sure that we got our point across. Number 1, our primary concern is safety, particularly with the proposed access through our neighborhood. The Timber Creek roads were designed to serve just 33 homes. Our roads are narrow, we do not have sidewalks or road markings, and children regularly walk in the street. The Jenks school buses do not provide door-to-door pickup and drop-off, and young children as young as early elementary age must use the streets to wait for the bus and walk to them from home. We already see safety concerns with increased delivery traffic. Adding through traffic to commercial development or a high-density multifamily development would significantly and unnecessarily increase the risk in a neighborhood that was not designed for it. Number 2, Timber Creek is a low-density country-style neighborhood with homes on a half-acre to multi-acre lots and values consistent with that type of development. Surrounding neighborhoods are similar to Timber Creek with high-value homes on large country-style lots. Importantly, our neighborhood is unincorporated and does not receive Jenks police coverage. We rely on Tulsa County Sheriff's Office, which is located approximately 30 minutes away. And you can go ahead and add about 20 minutes with the construction on Highway 75. Any new development on this adjacent property would receive Jenks police coverage, creating a mismatch in public safety infrastructure for existing residents within the same immediate area. Number 3, we are concerned about privacy, light, and noise impacts. Multi-story structures and increased density would fundamentally change the character of our neighborhood. Introducing lighting, traffic, and visibility into backyards that were designed for privacy and open space, much like Ryan's pool, senior. And number 4, the property is not typical residential land. It is a major oil and gas corridor with multiple pipeline easements and at least 3 actively producing oil wells. These are not minor details. They impose real limitations on where and how development can safely occur. The current concept plans appear to overstate what can realistically be built in these areas. And in closing, we are not opposed to thoughtful development of this property. However, we respectfully ask that any approval include clear conditions that reflect the safety realities of our neighborhood. We specifically ask that access through Timber Creek be prohibited and that appropriate buffering and low-density uses be required directly adjacent to our neighborhood. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. I want to say I particularly appreciated your email that you sent and that you knew that a development would happen on this property, but you gave suggestions to us of things that you would like to see, so I appreciate that.
Jacob Scrapper?
No, sorry, I see rosters not put my name on.
Okay. Jackie Ball? Same. Oh. Alex Tellerick?
Same thing, I was just second what Michael said.
All right. David Dotry? 2817. What? Oh, there you are, sir.
On the end of 114th Street in the Tulsa County area. And I understand that there's a road that would come through there. Is that correct?
The east-west, are you talking about the east-west street that you have a stub out from your community?
I'm right on the end of that street.
Okay. You're at the end where it was going to connect east?
I'm not sure where that, you said there was going to be a gate? So where is that street?
I'd have to, in Timber Creek?
Okay, so it's south of me? All right, well, that was a concern I had.
Sure.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thanks.
Kristen Tomlin?
I just want to second what Michael said. You did an excellent job presenting that. But just in addition, one of the things that makes Jenks so attractive is it's forward-moving, but it's also remained committed to keeping that small-town feel. And I think that being very careful about the way you proceed with this is keeping that balance. You've always done that, and I think that's going to only keep Jenks really the way it was designed to be.
Thank you.
Josh Musteller? Was that the preacher?
That was, he gave our invocation from Battle Creek. That was
Okay.
Josh. Josh signed in. Josh signed in for us too.
Sam Stetton? Good? Both of you? Okay. Charlotte Montgomery?
Charlotte Montgomery, 10612 South Fir Avenue. I had a question that is probably more for the developer, and that is he expecting to get a TIF development agreement with the city if this is approved? And also, another question for the developer would be, is he dependent upon Sooner Development to have their infrastructure in place before he would do this development? And then I had a suggestion for the apartments and the townhomes that are going to be next to the neighborhood that has all the concerns. I know that when you get to the discussion about how everything's laid out, hopefully if it ever gets to that point, that there has to be green space and amenities. And maybe one of the solutions to that is you put the green spaces like a walking trail around that backward L there, and some of the amenities to have a low visual space from those apartments, because I know that was a concern at, I think they're called the loft apartments that that are near the Village on Main, and how they backed up to that neighborhood because they can look out their balcony and see all the backyards there. So I'm just putting that out there. That might be a suggestion to put in there. And then the other thing is I think that the argument about the police and between city and county is significant, and that maybe at the at the city council meeting, there might be a statement, or Chief Jackson could make a, presentation or say something about that, because I think that would be significant. Thank you.
All right. That's all the names that we have on the list of members of the public here tonight wishing to speak. If there's anybody else that would like to that hasn't signed up, we would certainly like to hear what you have to say. Yes, sir. If we could. Could we get your name and address?
I think it's on the list.
Okay.
3203 West 118th Street. I too live in Timber Creek, the neighborhood that this case essentially encircles. I want to be clear that I'm speaking on my own behalf tonight as an individual, not on behalf of the resident or of the HOA. I also note that I submitted a written objection before the comment deadline that was sent to a wrong address, and I resent that tonight. I'd ask that it please be included prior before it goes to City Council. I understand tonight's action is on the rezoning and the PUD overlay, and I've shaped my comments accordingly. My hope is that this application is denied tonight, but I've read the staff report, and I understand that staff is recommending conditional approval. So I'm going to be realistic and ask the commission to use the one tool that tonight's hearing actually puts in front of you, the PUD overlay, to protect the neighborhood and this project that it encircles. The core issue is this: the PUD, as drafted, does not meet the city's own approval standards for a PUD. UDO section 1698D5, compatibility with adjacent land uses, requires, and I'm quoting, all adverse impacts have been mitigated through screening, landscaping, public open space, and other buffering features that protect uses within the development and surrounding properties. The applicant's own PUD document on page 3 describes the multifamily tract as a buffer to the mixed-use office commercial development. The applicant has acknowledged in writing that these uses are not generally compatible. That's why a buffer is needed in the first place. But the buffer they've drawn protects the commercial side. Timber Creek is on the other side. We are the buffer to the buffer. And because the project encircles our neighborhood, there isn't a single shared property line. It's multiple sides. Timber Creek is exposed to commercial and high-density multifamily with no required mitigation written into the PUD. Under the PUD's own development standards, RM2 permits 45-foot buildings at a 10-foot rear setback. That's a 4-story apartment building 10 feet from a Timber Creek backyard. That cannot be what 169D5 means by mitigated adverse impact. Staff recommends 3 conditions: continued coordination on platting, an east-west street on track 2, and compliance with the UDO. None of those 3 protect the neighborhood this project encircles. And every one of the protections I'm about to ask for is a PUD overlay condition. binding on every plat, every site plan, and every building permit that follows. 4 conditions. 1, a height to setback ratio along every property that's shared with Timber Creek, so RM2 buildings step down as they approach existing single-family homes. 2, a PUD level commitment to a physical buffer along every shared boundary, landscape berm or masonry walled, not just a fence, and a PUD level prohibition on vehicular street connections from the development into Timber Creek. 3, full cutoff shielding lighting with a maximum foot candle reading at every shared property line, and no electronic message boards facing our neighborhood. And 4, PUD level standards on commercial signage adjacent to residential, and a PUD commitment that delivery and waste collection hours will be restricted in the plan. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, John. I saw another hand over here. He nailed it?
I was just going to ask about the gate, but I'll let that be.
About the gate.
I was curious where, and she mentioned a gate.
He needs to come to the podium if he's
Yeah.
going to talk.
If you could, go ahead and come on up, give your name and address, please, sir. Thank you.
Nick Kanoki, K-N-O-C-K-E, 3109 West 118th Street in Timber Creek. And I was just curious about connecting our neighborhood to all the other stuff, and where was the gate going to be on the far east part of the property line where it connects? And you said that gate was just going to be locked at all times except for emergency crews to go through there? Or do you know about the gate?
The PUD mentions that for public safety purposes, that street needs to connect. It was required when your subdivision was built, and that it would always connect to a new subdivision to the east of you all. And so on their western property line where that street connects, they have said that they would put in I keep wanting to call it a crash gate. We don't call them that, really. No, it's not called that. But anyway, it would be for public safety access only.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick. Anyone else? Anyone else from the public wish to address this? All right, I see no one. We will go ahead and close the floor. If the applicant would wish to come back up and address a few of these things, that would be helpful to us and everyone present.
Mark Grubbs, 1800 South Sarah Road, on behalf of the applicant. I tried to jot down as many notes as I could.
I did too, so we'll get most of them.
Okay. As far as the TIF goes, if and when this property develops, moves forward, has end users on it, if it's the desire of the developer at that time to apply for that TIF, it was so it was in an approved TIF area, but the developer would have to come back and ask the council, I believe, to enact that TIF, and so I don't know if that would be taken advantage of or not. That was one question I heard. I've heard and saw the comments regarding Section 8 homes. There's no mention, or do I have any knowledge of any Section 8 developer looking at this property at this time. 111th is another half mile north of this. The city has connectivity plans as shown in Marseille's presentation. Who knows when that will happen? If and when this property is developed. As far as safety, I think the term that Marseille was looking for is we would put an emergency access gate for emergency vehicles, police, fire, ambulances if needed. Like Marseille mentioned, it was a requirement of their development to connect to the east, and we're just honoring that emergency access. There's no desire from this development to connect in and use their roads for through traffic. Privacy, lighting. Marseille, you could probably help me with this, but I believe your code probably addresses lighting and the amount of lighting that could actually spread over onto that. We didn't try to address that in the code. we would have to meet your code requirements for that. Gas, oil pipelines, those are all things that are already in motion by the landowners. They've already started working with the oil well owners to get rid of those and as much as possible. As far as sooner investments, infrastructure, are we dependent upon that? We're not dependent upon it if we're willing to bring it through their property. So as far as, if we decide to go first, I know that our landowner has been in coordination with Sooner, and I would think that Sooner would be more than happy to allow us to build that infrastructure for them. There was height to setback ratios, green space mentioned. I've got the same thing going on as Marseille did when she was talking, sorry. I think we're willing to entertain height to setback ratios. It's the first we've heard of it. We haven't discussed it. I'm happy to propose something between Planning Commission and City Council if I have the ability to do that. I understand their concerns with a multi-story apartment being right next to them. I'm willing to put setbacks in place so that they aren't right on their line if it is in fact a multi-story building, and also have the height ratios. Green space, also willing to put some green space in there with landscaping on it, but I don't have a width or anything prepared for you at this time. Lighting we discussed, the commercial, like Marseille discussed, the city's land use has this type of development planned for this area. I think we've worked with Marseille extensively to comply with that as well as possible, and what the city has planned for this area. I don't do enough zoning cases in Jenks to know, but do we have the ability to propose something prior to City Council as far as those height setback ratios, and work with staff to do that and bring that forward at City Council? And as far as the green space,
Yeah, we've allowed that in the past, and as part of our recommendation, we can put those things in our recommendation to council, and then you all go ahead and work through that between now and then.
I'm happy to work through that. I mean, that could develop as single-story stuff and not be multi-story. So we don't know at this time, but happy to protect them in some form from the multi-story abutting them directly. So, and that we could do that through the green space and the height setback ratios. I think that I have went through majority of the comments. I think I might have missed number 2, safety, privacy, gas, oil pipelines. I don't know what number 2 of, was that Michael?
Michael asks about safety and access, the country style lots and traffic, or how we're going to protect that. Privacy, light, noise, which you addressed through the code, and prohibiting access.
Yeah, I think I covered it all. Yeah.
Okay. Any additional questions for Mark while we got him back up here?
So I have some questions for you, maybe. So I know that you're saying that you would give buffer, but I actually have been out to this land in the part that you have the most apartments up there next to their neighborhood at Timber Creek. you have the most there because it's the most usable land, right? So
Which portion, green or blue?
the blue, you know,
Okay.
where you have like
So-
4 buildings all tucked in together right up against their
Well, there are
neighborhood?
there are the pipelines that work there, but.
So that's my question. So I feel like, so I've been a planning commissioner, only Scott's been here longer than me, so, but I feel like it's easy, like I would want to know what your proposals are before it goes to city, you know, because here we are, got to make a decision on what could be, and I know that we can put in, you know, we can make suggestions, but there's pipelines going through there, and you guys have the most, you're trying to get the most bang for your buck, right, in that area, because that's the most usable piece of property. My question is like, I understand you're saying you could set back, but I mean, do you think that this development is really going to let that happen?
I honestly.
I mean, what kind of safety can we get, you know, besides, I guess I would be interested in seeing what your proposals are, because these people do have nice houses, and I don't know who, if one of them has a really nice backyard. I made a mistake taking my wife through there, so that's gonna cost some money. But they do have really nice, you know, and I understand that we in Jenks are landlocked, and we have only a certain amount of land left. And I do know this whole area is going to be developed, probably something like Tulsa Hills, moving, you know, all the way to Highway 75 and down. And I live on the other Highway 75, and if you look at that map, I own some acreage over there, and there's red all down there. It's going to butt right up to my property too. So I'm definitely going in there. My only concern is those apartments are right there up against theirs, and you're putting the most based on that picture, you know, and I know it can change, but you only have so much of that land you can use. So how much are you guys really going to be willing to set back, you know, I mean, because you got to make your, you know, your
Like
money
I
because
said,
they
I
own the land.
don't, we obviously don't know at this time if there will even be a multi-story, multifamily development. I mean, thoughts that come to mind, you know, 30-foot green space area with buffers, trees planted on so many foot centers. If it's a multi-story building, it can be no closer than 50 feet, and it would have to step back, you know, 75 feet for another story, 100 feet for another story. Those are quick thoughts that are coming to my mind, but I haven't thought more through it than that at this point in time. So those are quick thoughts. And then again, it may not be multi-story at all. So I would want to put language in the PUD that if it's only a single story, what are we gonna do there? So, like I said, I'm willing to work to try to some sort of, you know, protection from their homes for that multi-story incident, but don't know if it'll even happen. But I do agree to put something in that PUD to protect them. I mean, is what I threw out sound good? I mean, but, you know, it's.
No, sir, not at this point, thank you.
I just wonder how much, like, you know, like if we were to approve this tonight, Marseille, can we require that in our recommendation?
Yes, you can make a
I
motion.
mean, it's just a recommendation. City council makes the final decision, so.
Correct, but you can, in your motion, per staff recommendation, and planning commission recommends, and whatever, however you want that worded, setbacks equal to, you know, I mean, no one here off the cuff has a solution, a number, so you can either say, work with staff to establish those numbers, and they can, then city council would have to determine if they thought that those setbacks were adequate.
Yeah, because it's like you know, I don't want apartments right up against these people's houses, but the developer's got to make the most he can out of the land, and that's just my concern, is like, that's the best piece of property there. How much are they going to be willing to do? And I would like to see it in writing so it doesn't just happen, say it here and then it doesn't happen.
I'm happy to work with staff to formulate that language prior to city council and get it into the PUD prior to city council.
Thank you.
Yes.
Any other questions for Mark? All righty, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, it's back to us. Further discussion. I would add to what Craig just mentioned with the setback ratios. Also having language in there that I think we would like to see a berm type deal with that, and green space berm with trees planted on that to a certain height, and with centers like he was talking about. Anything we can do to protect those homes.
How do we quantify on a condition for height to setback ratio? How do we here now quantify what that looks like for something that would?
We're not engineers, we're not architects.
I know, but
I'm just what I'm saying.
What is our comfort level?
Yeah.
We don't have that information, so it's a condition, but I guess what you'd be saying is whatever that condition comes out to be and set with the city, then that's city council's decision to make at that time. Okay. Well, my just personal opinion is that's very, very important. The green space and physical buffer, to me, is very important. A condition of, I don't know how it's to be worded, no through traffic with a closed emergency gate is important, because I think the through traffic does not fit the neighborhood use. So those are my three main points.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I do have a couple of comments. I think, Amy, with all due respect, I think we're getting way ahead of ourselves on this. Unfortunately, the way this is written, it's forcing us into a very untenable situation, because this is supposed to be a land use decision. But unfortunately, it's also combined with a PUD overlay and amendment to a comprehensive plan and blah, blah, blah. If this was only presented to us to rezone this from ag to commercial shopping, I would be all for it for this site. If nothing else, to protect the good residents of Timber Creek, because we have done that in the past to rezone agricultural use, which is pretty much wide open, to something that was more restrictive. That protects your development. It also protects us from things that would go in there, could potentially go in there, that are really undesirable and nobody really wants. Unfortunately, this is all combined into one thing. I'm not so concerned about the details of all the things that the developer has put together. I do appreciate your efforts into that. But this site, and I've spent about 15 years in doing commercial industrial development, this site is not ready for anything of this kind of development at this point in time. There is no connecting road between 121st and 111th East Avenue. I live off of 33rd West and 111th. Since I moved to that area, we've added the Laurel Apartments, we've added Meadow and Main, for it used to be called something else, and we've added Amy's development to 111th. It's the same two-lane, undeveloped road with no shoulders and no any kind of striping. There's a whole list of things on that. The traffic level on that connecting road is immense right now and is getting worse, as you said. 133rd West has become a minor arterial because of the construction on 75. With this development, with those housing units, to get to Jenks schools, There'll have to be a connecting road to get to 111th, and there's no plan for it. There's not even a 10-year plan for the development and improvement of 111th at this point in time. You're not going to make a left turn across 121st to get back to a connecting road to go back up to Jenks schools at rush hour. You can't turn left across there during that time of day. You can't turn left across there at 10 o'clock at night. So that alone, in my mind, would disqualify this particular motion just because of that. And then you have the whole issue of.
There's no motion.
Well,
We don't have a
this
motion, we're
particular,
debating.
well, this issue that's been brought before us.
I got you.
Okay. Then we have the whole other topic with Sooner Development, and Marseille had mentioned that that was approved 4 years ago, and there's still no infrastructure that's been brought to that site. And we hope that it's able to extend west to this other site, but we don't really know what that site's going to need. There's just too many unknowns with this. And the way that they have this package together, I can't not support it the way that it is written. There's too much unknown. And if we change this and put a PUD in there, then we have let the genie out of the bottle for anything else that would fit under that, because of the by right consideration. So in my mind, what we should do, if we could, would be to only look at, our recommendation to council would be only to do the rezoning from ag to commercial. And then when we get infrastructure put into place and we can support development there on a reasonable basis, then look at the development proposals coming in here. That's all. I just think we're way ahead of ourselves on that.
You want to respond?
Sure.
The connection to 111th is underway. The city has purchased the right-of-way that would go from James Street all the way, which is the half-mile mark where the Laurel and all of those are currently. The Lahoma family plat will be platted soon. That right-of-way has already been designed. That street is under design, and it will connect all the way through to 121st. So that connection from 111th to 121st is designed, or I should say accounted for through right-of-way purchase. So there is that, and then there are, you are correct on 111th, that has its own set of issues. But this development would be required to do their own traffic impact analysis, and that study itself would, should, and would be required to look at 111th and the impact to that and how that it could better serve all the elements of the development at 121st Street. I probably need a little clarification. So for straight zoning, someone just turns in a building permit and it gets built. There's no thought or protections for the public, period. If you put a PUD overlay on it, well, the protections are whatever is in the code. So that's not true. There are some. So if you could just maybe articulate to me I don't understand the comment that recommending straight zoning over a PUD would be beneficial, because there are uses that they're saying we wouldn't do. There are connections that they're saying we wouldn't have. So if you rezone a portion, maybe you're just asking for the bottom part to be rezoned and not the northern portion. I need clarification. But if it were rezoned without a PUD, whatever comes in has the right and will be connected through that neighborhood, period. Because who's going to tell them no? That street was intended to be connected to the east. This PUD says we won't connect to the east. So that's one huge benefit of having a PUD. And having an applicant who is willing to work with the neighborhood, et cetera. If you just rezone to commercial and someone turns in a building permit, you're going to go by only the straight zoning standards, and there wouldn't be any additional setbacks. So, but maybe you can clarify, Greg, are you talking about just the two lots on the south, the two 40 acres on the south, so to speak? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I think that the, the southern, the portion of that that you, I think lends itself to more, yes, to commercial development zoning because it has like uses to the east and along over to Sooner Development, and it's along the 121st corridor. I think that itself would be applicable for commercial development. But as far as the other, we're forcing ourselves into trying to engineer without engineer a residential subdivision that has multifamily, it has single family, how much are the berms going to be, and how high is the restriction? We don't have any idea, because we don't have any finalized plat on how that thing might develop. So I just think that, I understand what you're saying. We don't want to make it worse by not zoning, by not making a change that's restrictive enough.
Right.
But at the same time, I don't think this site is prepared to support this level of development. If it was all perfect in its application, the infrastructure's not in place to support it if they started on it tomorrow. So that really concerns me, that we've done some of these in the past and haven't had infrastructure in place, and we're still playing catch-up on some of them. And I don't want to see this one to complicate that situation any further.
But there's a process to all this. You can't have the infrastructure and then expect somebody to build. They own the land. Correct, Marseille? See what I'm saying? I mean, there's a whole process to this.
This is just like step one.
So the question before you this evening is the land use question. And in Jenks and the other communities that I've worked in, no one's going to build infrastructure for something they don't know is going to exist. So no one's going to go in and build a 4-lane street with curb, gutter, and drainage and not know if there's going to be commercial development next to it, if there's going to be single-family residential next to it, if there's going to be multifamily next to it. It's not going to happen. The connection, I will say, from 111th to 121st, that right-of-way has been purchased, the street is under design, and that would be a significant infrastructure piece. But that is done, the city is doing that. It will be reimbursed through the TIF process. It will be a huge piece of infrastructure for the full development of this area, and specifically for the commercial area, because in Oklahoma, communities survive by their sales tax. That's how you get police and fire. That's how you get all your services at and within a city. So that one piece is probably the only big infrastructure piece. There are also, because Sooner has been at the table for so long, there are significant plans and designs for water and sewer. So if that's the type of infrastructure that you're talking about, then I would say it's very close. And it's probably closer here than it has been in a lot of areas. But also, we approved Sooner years ago, and it has taken years to get it done. So on one hand, it should bring some comfort to people. Things don't happen overnight. But at the same time, we are looking and trying to solve some of the problems that you mentioned, because they are very significant and very important. But so when I say they're not going to build roads and things, you don't know what's beside you. The 40 acres of Timber Creek, no one's going to would have gone in there and built a grid for some future, development, because you don't know what's going on that street. Maybe you build a collector street, or maybe you build a commercial collector, or maybe you build a residential street. You don't know, so you don't build streets until you know what's coming. So this is the land use question. Is it appropriate at some time in the future to have this mix of uses? So we're saying, is it appropriate to have commercial in those two bottom 40-acre quadrants? So that he doesn't have the whole thing under contract, the applicant doesn't. But for the acreage along 121st, is it appropriate for commercial? Yes or no? Is it appropriate for a higher intensity of, or a higher density of residential on the north 40 acres? Yes or no? So those are the two questions that you're answering tonight. And the other problems get solved later in the process. There are other communities that, or other states, they don't rely on sales tax the way that we do. They have other revenue sources, and they do go in and build. They just cut up a big 40-acre tract, and they build a north-south street, and they build an east-west street, and say, whatever happens in the middle, let's get her done. But we don't do it that way. No one in Oklahoma does. This is the question. Is it appropriate to have residential on the north 40? Is it appropriate to have that buffer, and is it appropriate to have the commercial on the south? So that is the land use part. The rezoning is two pieces. I realize I never actually showed an exhibit on that, but track 2, which is the top 40, would be the RM2, and the balance, which is, I'll call it the bottom 2 tracks, that one is the commercial shopping. So everything that's pink plus that purple becomes commercial shopping with restrictions, and then the top portion becomes RM2. So minor amendment to the land use map to change that buffer area to, from business park to high-intensity single-family, and to rezone the top 40 to RM2, to rezone the bottom balance of a 40, 105 minus 40, and to commercial shopping with a PUD overlay. So the PUD overlay, the biggest difference is that, so if you just said, sure, we think it's appropriate for multifamily and we think it's appropriate for commercial, and you didn't approve the PUD, you can do that and change it from ag, but I don't have any additional protections. The protections that the public would have and the residents would have in large are what's in the code, which we have a pretty robust code. It has generous setbacks, it has a lot of landscaping requirements, and so there are good things within our code, but there's nothing extra. So we wouldn't be having a conversation tonight about additional height setback ratios because that's not part of the code, and you don't get to have those conversations when you do straight zoning. So that would be the biggest difference between rezoning or even rezoning a portion versus rezoning with a PUD. Maybe, did I make myself clear?
I think so.
Okay.
All right, so yeah, we're using the PUD to recommend certain restrictions to make us more comfortable with potentially making a recommendation to change the land use map and protect the adjacent properties and property owners and homes. I didn't see it at all as doing any type of over-engineering or engineering whatsoever. Just using the PUD process as it is intended to recommend certain restrictions. With that said, does anybody wish to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept case number JZ 26 with the PUD 156 conditional approval, and also recommend to the city council the appropriate language come together between now and the city council meeting for the height and offset of the units that are bordering Timber Creek, and a provision of a berm and green space built around that too, to provide some spacing. To Amy's question about, or comment about emergency access gate, I think that's already in the plan, and I don't know that we need to recommend that. So, but it's a good point. That's my motion.
Is there a second?
Before we get to a second, I should make sure I have this written down right. Height and offset, or height and distant offset for the units next to Timber Creek, berm and green space around the apartments. and then
Or
emergency
around,
access.
around the Timber Creek
Yeah, yeah.
area,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Can we just clarify that you have it berm or green space around Timber Creek as buffer?
I was going to clarify that, so that would be their southern boundary and their eastern boundary.
Right.
You're asking for buffering on the southern boundary and the eastern boundary of Timber Creek.
Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's vote, please.
Wilson,
Yes.
Boers,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Sellers,
Yes.
Nixon,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Chair West.
Yes. Agenda item number 4 is to recommend approval of the downtown master plan to the Jenks City Council. Anthony, are you making another presentation for us tonight or have something to say? It's shorter.
Well, good evening, Chair West, Commissioners. I know it's a long evening, so I will truly make it short tonight.
Start the 3-minute timer.
Yes, my name is Anthony Miave, Principal of Beck Design, and I will forward through a lot of this because we've already kind of discussed, but just as a recap, anyone that might not have been here last time, I just want to showcase some of the renderings of the concepts, that unifying vision for what downtown could potentially be. Looking at it through ground level at different angles, again, just maybe a little bit different than what had previously been shown. Actually, correction, we did show these last time. We've gone through an additional layer of development to kind of showcase there were some concerns about the walking distances with reallocating parking from Main Street. So one of the things that we wanted to do is showcase Costco at 101st and Memorial and overlay it on our site. And this is done just as a reference to show what is existing, how much of our downtown kind of fits within that type of parameter. And then also identifying that there are 3 city-owned parking lots within that same space, in addition to street parking on the north-south streets. So 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And that was really the only additional layer just for clarification and a visual of what other parking is available within that immediate area as compared to a shopping experience at Costco. One of the other developments where we stopped last time was looking at that lot directly west of the railroad tracks, which we have been calling the West Gateway Development. Again, right? Yes, with the names trying to avoid confusion of what it is yet again, and it seems that we create confusion every time we give it a name. But the last time we spoke, we talked about the analysis that went into determining what types of uses and what mixes of uses would be most appropriate, and using the information from the parking study and from the market analysis to make those determinations, and then using a scoring system to be able to identify those. And now what I'm showing is that additional development of where that analysis takes us and what that type of vision for this space would be. We wanted to create flexibility within this footprint, knowing that this is not something that's necessarily set in stone, it is a guiding vision to guide development that is authentic and follows what is existing as that core of downtown Jenks. So the building on the north, looking at retail restaurant uses on the first floor with a potential of either multifamily lofts or office space on the second floor. An office building and then another inner building which would have potentially restaurant uses on the first floor, office on the second floor. 32 living units, and the potential for a parking lot that could become a garage as the need for the additional parking arises. Creating that buffer zone between the railroad track and creating a public amenity that would allow you to utilize that space, shield some parking that becomes kind of interwoven into the development, and creating some of those interior outdoor spaces that we had discussed on Main Street. Going through some images of what this potential development would look like. This is back if you're standing kind of in this parking lot looking north, where you see lots of activity, lots of flexibility, whether it's a farmer's market, a pop-up shop, or just kind of leisurely being able to hang out in these spaces. This is looking at that same area, but if you're on Main Street looking south. Again, we're trying to create a space that has a diversity of use, that is dynamic, that allows for different people to be able to utilize the space with the convenience of close parking and making sure that we are able to have spaces that can be activated, but also spaces that stand alone by themselves. Again, what we've identified as a promenade that allows you to traverse the site from north to south without having to completely go around the block. And then spaces that traverse the buildings themselves, creating those easy pathways between the north and south areas of the block without having to go around the block, creating these nice little special spaces, special nodes within the development. And then the last image, this one on a ground level view, is looking at Main Street if you were traveling eastbound. And an aerial view again looking southwest. As you can see, we've tried to be very mindful and cognizant of the scale of the development so that it fits within the core of downtown. The spacing, we wanted to provide the convenience of different types of parking close by, but create enough separation and shielding that it doesn't feel like you are in a parking spaces. And the last few things, we did look at this last time, but this is kind of how we scored, looking at everything from character, street character, building character, and also identifying how to shield and protect from the road. The next few slides are part of a little bit deeper analysis on how we arrived at these points. I won't walk you through all that because I know it is a late evening. And I know that was more than 3 minutes, but.
Does anybody have any questions for Anthony?
I don't know if I have any questions, but like in our meeting the other day that we had, some of the people that were in the room that were we're all citizens, but that weren't tied to the city council or planning commission, they asked us what we would like to see happen in this first. And I'd just like to say that my response to them is I really want to see the sidewalks extended and the parking, a majority of the parking, whether that's parallel and a couple of places where we had drop-offs, but I'd like to see that done right away, and that be the first part of this development, because I feel like, and I'd like to see that from the railroad tracks to where KFC used to be, is that 2nd Street. But I'd like to see that happen as soon as possible, because I feel like if we do that and the general public sees this picture that's before us right now, we have opportunity to grow our downtown, and these businesses that are coming and going because there's not enough traffic down there would have a better chance of staying and being part of, the growth of Jenks. So I just wanted to say that, and I urge the city council to approve this and get this moving as soon as possible. I think it's long overdue. Our sidewalks down there are not in good condition, and when you see some of what's going on with some of the restaurants, pulling their chairs out and putting them in the, on the sidewalks, it's just amazing. They're completely full of people when I've drove by and saw those. So in my response to the people that asked, as a planning commissioner, what would I want to see happen first? This is what I would like to see happen first, and I'd like to see it happen sooner than later. That was my only comment.
Yeah, my comments are, I think the renderings are beautiful. I'm super excited about having the extra dining space and the walking space. I agree, I think it's long overdue. I'm all about the job growth, the economic growth. I owned a building on Main Street that I sold about 4 years ago. It's now City Hall. So I understand those challenges because I dealt with it every day going to work. So I'm for it. I want to pass it, or I want to recommend to pass it. But I do have a couple of concerns that I would like to point out, and that one is first of all, beautiful report and beautiful renderings. I think you guys did a fabulous job. On page 11, it mentions that the parking study was done in October of 2024. And my research also shows that Jenks is one of the fastest growing cities, and just since 2020 has had a 10% population growth, 10.32% population growth. So I think a lot has changed since 2024. My concern would be relying someone on that, and maybe there's some more information in here that I missed. By utilizing those 2024 numbers, it still says an additional 92 spaces is needed for microboundary to accommodate the projected future demand. So I have a concern for the lack of parking. So even at that, then we're going to remove 80 spaces on those two streets. So you may have some input for me there. I'm just going to be very vocal. I think the park that is behind the businesses is completely unutilized, dead space. I realize the city spent money on it, but it is what it is. They spent money on it. It's sitting there. It doesn't get used. It needs to be something that would be used. The most used item would be parking. Everybody's continued to talk about it. So I am unclear as to why we wouldn't take a space that we already own, that's underutilized, sitting there, empty, and use it for the parking space that everybody's been crying for. So that's my input for the parking, because I do still think close parking is a big item for Main Street businesses. And I think there was one more point, the loading zones, I think is, if we're going to take away all that parking and we're just going to have drive-by, I think loading zones of some kind, I don't have the answer for that, elderly, ADA, how are these people going to get there?
You had a picture the other day that showed that.
And maybe I missed something. So those are my main concerns, and really only concerns, because I think everything else is beautiful.
Thank you. And I'll address, kind of maybe go backwards with the first one. Whenever we're talking about this blue lines on the providing an enhanced building frontage, we are not talking about completely removing parking. We are making allowances for limited parking by exception, which includes drop-off zones, short-term parking, and accessible parking. And then as far as the report from October of 2024, it is not included formally in the report, but we had them updated based on the new businesses that have come in. And the change has not been significant at that point because they were included in the projections. The projections that you're talking about, the 92 additional parking spaces needed, is a projection if every single storefront were to be full. And it includes removal of the projected parking in the blue lines. So at that point in time, when everything is full, or if we make all of these changes, at that point, we would need 92 additional parking spaces. So in order to accommodate those additional 92, we want to make the West Gateway development have the flexibility to accommodate a potential parking garage when that need arises.
Okay. I think I'm pretty focused on close parking, not parking on the other side of the railroad tracks. At 6:28 on Tuesday evening, I was parked on Main Street to eat. And when I pulled out, a car had to wait on me to pull out. So I made a conscious effort. Why are they waiting on me at 6:28 on a Tuesday evening when there's nothing going on in Jenks, really? And I drove through there twice so that I could very fully see from the railroad tracks to the end of Bank First, which is almost at KFC, there was not one empty parking space. A car had to wait on me to pull out. So it just alarmed me to the fact that not only at 6:28 on a Tuesday is there no parking, we're going to remove over 80 of those spaces. I still feel a very strong need for close parking space. I'm all about removing them, but I'm not about removing them without replacing them at the same time. My 2 cents.
And I agree with you, but like if you go back to the Costco deal, I feel like any of us would walk the distance of a Costco parking lot, right? I guess that's
But to
over there.
counter, because I ate downtown on Friday at Bellaroma, and we parked just on the north side of George's. That wasn't even a block. And everybody else was seeming to do the same thing. So I hear what you're saying. I think there needs to be some, but I think there is more parking accessible. And downtown was hopping. They had it.
To that point, that's right there. So that's another close parking spot. Like the park is another close parking spot.
I agree with you on the
But
park.
we're talking about adding parking spots on the other side of the railroad tracks to accommodate at that time, there's still those 80 parking spots there. If we remove those, other than the Georges and the places that are there now, and I agree, that's close, there are no other close parking spots except for these lots that we've identified out 2 and 3 blocks away.
Yeah, private lots.
Yeah, and I'm just having a hard time grasping it. I just got to be honest. So I don't think people are going to walk from the First Methodist Church. I don't think people are going to walk.
Yeah, it's, the comparison to parking, to getting in your car, driving across town and going to a commercial center parking lot to get groceries. Yeah, you did that. You're going to walk in and get your
You've got a
groceries.
shopping cart.
Going to a quaint downtown restaurant is a different thing. And you might just pass it by and go on down to Katrina's or, on further west to 75 or up to Tulsa Hills or.
I guess I'm just saying,
I
I
agree
think we
with
have
you.
a very easy solution. The solutions, there's several right in front of us, but nobody's willing to take out the park that's sitting there empty that
I
never
agree with
gets
the park. I
used.
agree with the park thing as well. It's been wasted space for.
I don't know how long it's been there, but
Long
no
time.
one is there and no one's going to go there and just sit because there's nothing to do there. But I'm
watch the
just
traffic go
saying,
by.
it's unfortunate that it was money spent sitting there, but
Well,
it's underutilized. And
city
it
also
says in the
sp-
report it's not being utilized.
Yeah, and the city spent money on the art incubator, whatever it ended up being called. The Hive. It started out as the art incubator, and they had somebody come haul that away and make it a parking lot. It's the same thing.
We sold it.
So,
We
Sold the
don't own
materials,
the
yeah.
park. That property is owned by the school. We lease it.
But we put $1.1 million into it?
We have a lease, but I'm just saying the actual property is not owned by the city of Jenks.
They paid to lease it, but you can lease it as a parking lot or you can lease it as a park. It's still leased. So,
The lease is for a park. So it would, but I don't know what they would say. I'm just saying we do not
Yeah.
have control of the
Well, that's helpful information because I didn't realize all that. At any rate, that's the only concern I have because I think it's beautiful. And I would really utilize the sidewalk space in the dining, personally.
And I just want to say, putting those rendering out the way we did publicly, I know people that have talked to me, they flip going, wow, are you serious? It can really look like this? So I think that was one of the best steps that we have done. So as this process goes along, and I agree with Craig, this should be done in phases, and the first phase should be from the railroad tracks east, that whether we have, I'm a marketing person, so sorry, whether we build a campaign around it so that Bob the Builder can continue to show people where we are in that process, I think will just help the overall intent that we're trying to do with downtown Jenks.
We also need to have some information messaging on the parking, because except for when it's raining, you really don't need to park in front of the place that you're going to. We're fortunate to have legs that allow us to walk, that we aren't disabled. For those that are disabled, they are getting around with walkers or crutches or they're being pushed around, whatever. But for us, that are very capable, it's okay if we park behind the ice cream store and walk to the lodge or walk to one of the restaurants on Main Street. Those you need to have some exercise.
Well, and Anthony has made it a point in one of his presentations, one of the number one things was increased signage of where parking is.
Yeah. Well, not only increase that, but also the messaging of, you're within 5 minutes of a walk to any place on Main Street, if you'll just take the 5 minutes to walk.
You had also mentioned that there is not enough, I'm not sure how it was worded in here. There was not enough retail and/or office space, that you recommended more of that. So as things come in and they develop and they infill, did the parking studies or recommendations account for those future projections as well?
Yes, the parking study does account for the future projections. It also recommends a formal shared parking model in which private lots are in agreement with the city that those can be used. Right now, they are informally used in that fashion, but it would be good to have a formal agreement.
By the way, the renderings are great. They are, I think, I heard Marseille say in the last meeting that they were stunning. They are very good. I don't know what level of stunning gets you there, but they're very good.
Any other questions for Anthony? Nope. Thank you, sir. Ms. Montgomery? Absolutely. Come on up. You have good questions.
Charlotte Montgomery, 10612 South Fur Avenue. Ed is feeling unwell, so he couldn't come tonight, but he wanted to point out a couple of things, that on the side streets, we had presented this to you, on the side streets where between Maggie's and City Hall, and then between the ice cream shop and the antique store, that's parallel, and you could convert that to angled parking and it's not right in the middle of the block, but you could use those for drop-off, for additional handicap parking, because over in George's parking lot, there is no handicap parking. Did you know that? No handicap parking. And there's two handicap parking over by City Hall, but it's two of them, and my sister is in a wheelchair. If I had a vehicle that had the electric wheelchair mount on the rear, I couldn't fit in those spots. So, I mean, you truly, we go back to that, you need to think about that it's not always like somebody in a car with a walker, and to consider that. So he wanted me to point that out again. And the other thing was, we talked about, we agree with you, Commissioner Bowman, about let's get the sidewalks done, let's get 2 or 3 blocks really prettied up in front. How do we get there? I always feel like this is really a great idea and you're a recommending body, but maybe I have to look to Marseille to say, how do we get that done? Because I have a feeling that in a year and a half from now, we'll be saying, I wonder when we're going to get those sidewalks done. I want this to get done. So that's all I had.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, do we need to recommend this to the council?
We do.
I make a motion to recommend this Jenks Downtown Master Plan to the city council for approval.
Second.
Let's vote, please.
Wilson,
Yes.
Boers,
Yes.
Bowman,
Yes.
Sellers,
Yes.
Nixon,
Yes.
Williams,
Yes.
Chair West.
Yes. Planning updates.
None.
All right, we will
I'm done.
call our meeting adjourned at 8:20.
Thank you all.